I'm here with Garreth Lee, former BizTech member and co-founder of Mundo AI, a YC accelerated startup.
Thank you for having me. I'm Garreth. I'm the co-founder of Mundo AI. And so we're building the data infrastructure for multilingual AI. And so we work with the leading researchers from the top labs around the world, and we make sure that their data needs are well supported so they can train the best models that can impact the most amount of people. And previously, like you said, I was in the partnerships team at BizTech.
You say multilingual. Just want to focus on that really quickly.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So multilingual in layman's terms is literally just multi-language. So AI that supports multiple languages, not just English, which is so far the predominant language for AI.
Yeah, got you. And I'm just going to quickly ask, in terms of, does that pose significantly new technical challenges, given that the majority of data that's out there right now is probably in English?
Yeah, you basically outlined the challenge. So the issue is that so far for the internet, it's like the internet was designed for a very predominantly English population, right? So the way it was designed, the infrastructure that's built on top of it, as well as the access in general has been English focused for a very long time. And only recently, with the whole 21st century, that a lot of the world started to get access to it. But as a result, like a lot of the data that's been accrued so far has been very English focused. And in these other languages that are, more lower resource, as we call it, there's not really a lot to work with. And as a result, like, the models that are trained with these data, can only go so far. And, our goal is to basically bridge the gap between, English and all these other languages to make sure that a lot of people around the world that don't speak English can still get access to high quality AI.
That's really, really awesome. As someone whose second language is English, I could so see a need for that.
Totally, yeah.
Was there something, so for me, that's my personal connection, was there something that inspired you personally to pursue sort of this multilingual model that you're working with? How did you see that gap?
Yeah, absolutely. So for a very long time, I've always known it was an issue because my previous internships were mostly AI focused. So I got basically a glimpse of the challenges that came into the whole training process. And it's sort of a very easy mission to support because, like you, English is my second language. My first language is Indonesian, and if your second language is English, you've probably done this before. Like when you're using ChatGPT or any sort of AI, you probably tried once or twice to use it in your native language, and you've seen how absolutely terrible it is. And it's sort of a telling sign. It's only a small percentage of the Indonesian population that can speak English. Imagine if we were able to create an AI system that's able to be really good in Indonesian. Like, imagine how much more people you'd be able to impact it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a sort of a very easy mission to support. And when I was at 𝗖𝙗𝙗𝗍, my previous internship, I sort of saw a first look at how bad the disparity is in terms of what's available, the English data versus the Indonesian data, right? And so you take this across all languages, and you can immediately see how big and how daunting of a problem it is. So it's immediately something that's really easy to support, and I feel it's something that I'm super motivated to kind of work with.
I'm really curious about how you go about tackling that technical challenge if there just isn't as much data available in other languages.
Yeah.
Can you get into how you're choosing to deal with that, or no?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so there's different ways that you can solve this problem of data disparity, right? But the main idea is that you want to create more data. There's different ways you can create more data. There's synthetic approaches, which means that you are sort of creating artificial data using maybe some other model, maybe asking ChatGPT to output a specific style of text in a specific type of language. But the problem is with that is this whole mantra of garbage in, garbage out, right? If a model isn't really good at a specific very niche language, it's probably not going to be good at creating data for that language. And so the other approach, which is sort of the more common way that people have been using to create high quality data, is to get people around the world, so people who speak these languages as a native language, to help create the data. And so what we've done at Mundo is basically we've created this platform that allows people to very easily hop on wherever they are in the world and contribute to creating these data for their native languages.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. All right. Now that I've kind of fed my personal curiosity a little bit of the technical details, I'll get into the actual questions that I'm supposed to ask you. So you were formerly a member at BizTech.
Yes.
Alumni here, heritage, whatever you'd like to call it. So looking back on your partnerships lead, if I'm not mistaken,
yes.
correct? So looking back on that position, how has that helped you through your journey in founding a successful startup?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to glaze BizTech, but I feel like it's been the sole, I wouldn't say sole, but the most important, I guess, factor in terms of getting me where I am. Because specifically for partnerships, I guess there's like two facets to it, right? So first of all, so I started BizTech when I was in third year, and this was relatively nascent in terms of my like career, but I was exposed to so many, I guess, like cool people that you work with, right? And as partnerships, you're reaching out to all these people, getting them to come to BizTech events. But as a result, and this is what I tell all my partnerships directors, right? Like working for the club, right? And getting these people to your events, you're also building your own personal network, right? And that's a network of people that you can leverage one day when, let's say, you want a connection at a specific company, want a referral, and all these different things. And so, like, the indirect impact is like my network sort of like ballooned after getting into BizTech. But also within the partnership team itself, it's like the act of reaching out to these people and learning how to get people to A, like want to reply to you or care at all, or B, to also like continue that conversation and close it. And whether that's, getting people to come, getting sponsors to attend the event, and all these different things. And so that's been very impactful because like right now, like I'm working with different clients and different companies. There's very different styles when it comes to talking to these people, right? Some people, LinkedIn doesn't work for them because they're very busy. They're like these CEOs that, LinkedIn's basically thousands of messages. You won't get access to them. Some of them are more accessible through email. Some of them even on Twitter, right? There's all these different methods to do this. And like being in partnerships, you kind of get a sense of what's the best way and how to pivot if a strategy doesn't work. And I think that resilience is kind of what helped me be where I am.
Hey, I feel very special for being in this thing.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, I guess. This is a really good question. I like this. Good job.
Oh, you made him?
Yeah, she locked it on me. So the startup market right now is really, really saturated. It feels like everyone is trying to go create a startup,
yeah.
At least from my point of view in university. What is a really big misconception that you think right now is out there about startups in general? I'm going to leave it pretty broad.
Yeah, that is a great question. Misconception. So I think that there's this illusion, and I wouldn't say illusion, I guess. It's just that there's a perception that's created by the very successful startups around the world. There's like, it's even portrayed in media where, the social network, the story how, Facebook, now Meta, became super successful, is sort of portrayed in a very fun and I guess like adventurous way. And I think that for a lot of people, it creates the perception that it's like a very fun and liberating journey, right? It's like, I don't have to work for anyone. It's just, I work for myself and like, I can control my destiny. And while that is true to a certain extent, I think that it kind of masks the 99% of the cases which is going to happen, which is that your startup might fail, and only the 1% of the success stories are shown. And so I think it's just that people have this sort of asymmetry of expectations where like, I'm starting my own thing, it's going to be super fun, and I'm going to make a boatload of money. But in most of the cases, like it's going to be mostly a learning experience, and you're going to go through a lot of trials and tribulations in the process. And so I think that's just the main thing. So people just have a really big asymmetry in terms of like, I'm going to start a startup and it's going to be super successful, it's going to be super fun, and I'm going to breeze my way through it. I think that's the main thing I've seen so far, at least within my circle of people. Yeah.
Do you think it's more of a survivorship bias that's there, where like only the success stories are portrayed, or do you think that even from the success stories, only the fun and good parts are portrayed? Or a bit of both?
I think it's a mix of both. It's dependent on which circles you're in, because I would say if you're in sort of a general population, you're not really in the startup niche. Only the very good stories will go out, and only the very bad stories will go out. And a lot of times, people, like you said, have this bias where like, they want to sort of fixate towards the good stories, right? They want to listen to the success stories of Facebook, like all these other really cool startups, that made it big and see how they can make it big too. And so in a way, I think there's a lot more focus towards the potential of success. And so that's why you see a lot of people just like, oh, I want to start a startup, I want to start a startup. And so, yeah, I think that's sort of where it comes from. And I think you're kind of right, where there's that bit of bias there.
So I think it's interesting. When the market gets so saturated like this, especially in an entrepreneurial market, like the startup market, I think it becomes a lot harder to have success because everyone's trying to do something.
Yes.
Do you find that that's the case, or do you find that because of the amount of saturation and everyone trying to do the same ChatGPT wrapper, it's easier to find success and to stand out among these sort of people? So what's your thoughts on that?
This is a great question, a very, very great question. I used to be a huge hater of the term ChatGPT wrapper because it's essentially what they're doing, right? You're basically calling OpenAI's API or whatever underneath the hood, and you're just wrapping an application on top of it where the moat isn't really nothing, right? It's just, you're basically just processing the outputs of this API and producing it in another way. And I used to be a huge believer of this, and where it's there is no moat fundamentally, and businesses that do this will never succeed. But if you look at a lot of the very successful businesses today, if you just look at, I'll just give a short example. People were bullying Perplexity for a long time. Perplexity is this AI search engine for people who aren't familiar. And for a very long time, they were, oh, this is just a ChatGPT wrapper, it's never going to succeed. But we see them now, and they're able to have such a huge following, right? And they've basically used that wrapper app as sort of the spring to launching these other platforms or these other offerings that they have. So I really think that this idea of ChatGPT wrapper isn't really something that's, it's not something that's going to stop you, right? If you think about it, a lot of these very successful apps, like I said, are wrappers. And the core issue that these startups need to solve is distribution. Because you might have a really great product, you might have a really great application, it might be really cool, feature-rich, but if you aren't able to distribute it accordingly to whatever market you're trying to target, or whatever niche, it's all for nothing. So I think that's the main challenge. It's not really just, it doesn't matter if you're creating very similar products. DoorDash is a thing, Uber Eats is a thing, but you can see that these two things can coexist and they can both succeed. So it's not like a winner takes all market a lot of the time.
So the competition can actually drive up success for
multiple companies. Exactly. And you don't, even if you're making the same product at the end of the day, there's always a niche that you can target. And just by doing really good at that niche in terms of distribution, keeping them happy, you can still be very successful. And that's I would say 90% of the companies in the startup market.
Yeah. Now you founded obviously a successful startup that got into 𝗖𝙭. I was excited about 𝗖𝙭. What's something you would wish you'd known before going sort of all into this project? And, well, it's more than a project now.
Yeah. So it's a lot of things, because just a bit of background, I wasn't really into entrepreneurship. I was kind of like the prototypical CS student, right? So get an internship, 1 or 2 internships, and get an internship at big tech, and I'm going to see myself become I don't know, maybe an IC, an engineer or something at a big tech company. But then suddenly this opportunity came up, and then it was all very sudden. And so I think one thing I wish I could have learned or at least prepared myself before is just a sudden shift of your priorities and responsibilities, right? Because now as a co-founder, yes, you are responsible for engineering and coding and all these different things, but there's also, oh, someone's calling me.
Okay.
Oh, it's a random number. So how are we gonna repeat that?
Let's see. I think just pick up where you left off.
Pick up where I left off? Okay, I'm trying to remember what I said.
You were talking about how your priorities change. Going from engineer to...
Yeah. Okay. So now as a co-founder, your priorities kind of change, where you used to have the luxury of only just focusing on the code, and then coding super fun, right? Oh, I just want to code and create this really feature-rich thing. And now like you're sort of engineer, marketer, salesperson, all these different things. And so you're immediately thrust into all these different, responsibilities and roles. And you kind of have to do a good job of balancing all these different things and dictating how much you want to focus on all these different things. Because if you just focus on, engineering, like you're not going to do a lot of sales, and that's obviously not good. So I think I wish I could have known just how many like different hats you have to wear. Yeah, exactly.
Well said. So in continuation of that then, I think, well, one thing about wearing many different hats is that you just have to think in a lot of different ways.
Yes.
You have to kind of run around a little bit and be able to prioritize your time. I'm someone who's been thinking a lot about building momentum. And so as an engineer, if you get 4 hours to work on something, that's back to back, you're getting a lot more done than 4 hours disrupted by meetings every hour.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So I find that it might become difficult to build momentum. How do you deal with having to wear so many different hats? And having to switch gears so often throughout a week, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it all comes down to planning and blocking out your day. And this is something I didn't really do before. I would just sort of like, it's a 9 to 5 or like whatever time we're working with. I'll just do whatever task I'm working on right now and see where that takes me. But I'm sort of more critical, and I'm more conscious of how I plan my days. And so I want to make sure there's blocks of time where I can do a very specific task. Whether that's engineering, whether that's sales, whether that's like, like a discussion with the team, like you plan around that and make sure you have adequate time to focus on whatever is next. And so, like you said, so creating that momentum by making sure that there's like ample time within that block to work accordingly.
Yeah, that's okay. So I like that a lot. So you make sure that there's enough sort of time for you. Because I feel like there's a certain level of activation energy required to really get rolling on a task.
Absolutely,
and there's just a 30-minute block, even if it accumulates to 10, 20 hours in the week, just won't be enough until you can kind of ride that roller coaster and gain that momentum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is a good question. I'm going to kind of go back to BizTech a little bit.
Okay.
While you were at BizTech, was there any moments that you had running an event or doing something during your time that was like, oh yeah, this is preparing me for what's coming up? Like this is going to be this moment right here. This is a skill I'm building for the future, for sure.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you the story. It's not really answering your question, but this is a story I tell everyone. I think most people in BizTech already know this story, at least within the partnerships team. But so basically before joining BizTech, I was sort of the prototypical CS student again. So what that means is basically I was mass applying to jobs. I was just cold applying like 10, 20 times a day. I was just praying that one of them would hit. So it's sort of this like quantity over quality approach. And so I remember this was like literally my first BizTech social. And socials are basically events we have like like throughout the year, like with the team bonding sort of thing. And this was my first social. I didn't know anyone in the team. And I just remember like meeting these really cool people, obviously these people who are like really talented and have been to really cool internships. And I remember the conversation being like, oh, how did you get your internship? And then so, I was pretty timid because I know that I was just cold applying, right? There's no special sauce to it. And I remember just like hearing a story from, I think one of our previous directors or leads, and they were just saying how, cold outreach and networking and doing all these different things can be essentially the make or break. And you'll have to apply to like hundreds of different things, or like different applications to get into a job. And so that's sort of the spark that lit up like, oh, I have to change this, right? Clearly it's not working. And so it was literally that night, I just, I've been following this company for a bit. I connected with the manager and I just said, hey, I would really, I asked him a very specific question that's sort of tailored to the company. And I remember the day after, he just replied and told me, okay, cool. Wait, why are you asking me this? And I was just frank, like, okay, I actually want to apply for an internship. And I want to prepare for in case I get an interview. And then I was just super frank and super transparent. I was just, okay, whatever. Like he was probably just gonna refer me to someone else. And he was like, oh, okay, why don't I give you an interview? And so it's like, oh, no resume, no nothing, but just by like pure agency and like this desire to like, do something about it. Like I was able to get an interview and I was like, oh, like I was like, my heart was beating like crazy. At that moment, I was acting nonchalant and like, oh yeah, sure. What time works for you? And he was like, oh, what about tomorrow? And I'm like, oh, No, I can make work.
I'm free.
I'm free. Yeah, I'm definitely free.
And has like everything scheduled on that.
Yeah, no. I
Like,
just
yeah,
moved it
I'm
all
good
out.
tomorrow.
Exactly. And so I was just, okay, so this is it. So yeah, I just prepped for it. It went really well, and I got the internship. And so,
first of all, I mean, I know it's from a long time ago, but congratulations.
yeah, thank you. But like, this is exactly the story of like why I tell people that, you know, being in BizTech and getting to meet all these people is super important, because like I didn't apply at all to the job. Okay, I had no resume. They didn't even know, you know, like my email at that point, right? It was really just a LinkedIn message, and he sent me like a Google Meet link, so nothing. But I got accepted just because of that, and it just shows you, like, cold applying isn't really the only way to get a job, but also like, you know, networking and knowing more people, and you do that by being in these BizTech events is sort of the easiest way, I would say, especially as a UBC student, to kind of do that. Yeah.
You didn't even have your resume.
No resume. To this day. So this was a company called 𝗘𝗽𝗶𝘀𝗄𝑻.
Yeah.
They don't have my resume to this day. So literally, it was.
𝗘𝗽𝗶𝘀𝗄𝑻's LinkedIn users after.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
That's hilarious. There's
Yeah.
no resume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a deeper question. It's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to know the answer to this really fast.
Okay.
Because it's something I struggle with.
Hit me.
How do you manage uncertainty and fear when you're working with something you've invested all of your time into?
Yeah, that's a great question, because honestly, I'm also still dealing with that. I think anyone that tells you they have it under control is lying. Like even the most successful people in the world, like these CEOs, these top executives. You know, I think there's always that uncertainty, and as a result of the uncertainty, there's always that fear. Like you said, I think you don't get better in terms of like not having the fear anymore. You just learn to control it better. And so I think one approach I've sort of taken is that, especially as a startup, there's going to be a lot of fires that sort of happen every day, like little accidents, little like mishaps. And for someone who wasn't as experienced as me, like who was like sort of very used to the cadence of a big tech job, it was just very, very different. And I was very concerned, like, oh, every little fire or every little accident I sort of treated as like the end of the company. And so I think learning to like compartmentalize these different things and just treat it as isolated incidents and be very objective, as in like, okay, I have this issue, you know, this isn't the end of the world because there is a solution to this, and I'm just gonna complete the solution and move on, right? So it's just like making sure that you break down these issues, because often like to your mind, it would seem like a very big issue where like it'd probably be something like, oh, like I'm gonna fail at this. Right. But when you start to break it down, you're going to start to realize, okay, why am I failing at this? Oh, maybe I'm too busy. Or maybe there's another facet where it's like, oh, I don't have enough time to do this. And you start to break it down and like, okay, why am I busy? So I'm busy because maybe I'm taking 6 courses while I'm doing BizTech and all these different things, right? So it's just like you learn to like compartmentalize these different things, and then like, okay, let's solve these things one by one. And the second part of it is also taking it day by day, because you're not going to whittle down like a big sort of problem by taking it all at once. You're going to chip it down bit by bit until it's eventually gone.
I think that's really, really important. I think if you don't believe in your own vision, who will?
Exactly.
Really important that is.
So it's not about just believing, but it's also surviving when the vision doesn't look like it's at its strongest, which is, I feel like, the most.
So let's say I'm a student at UBC.
Yes.
I have no technical background.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have business background either.
Yeah.
But I really, really, really want to get started in the startup scene. What is my first step?
Yeah, so I would say the first step is to kind of hone in on one of those, because I'd say, you know, in a startup, this is an environment where you sort of want to contribute, right? It's not it's not an environment where you'd be learning. And if you want to do the learning, that's where you do it in an internship, right? So you want to hone in on like one of these things, or possibly both, whether that's, you know, the business side of things, the product, or the tech side of things. So that's like, you know, coding ability, all these different things. So that would be the first step, I think. Just like hone in, find out what interests you, you know, try out a bunch of different things. But also, other than that, I'd say you should go to events where you would meet a lot of people, because I think a lot of founders can attest to this, where it's like a lot of these events is where you'd find your co-founders and other people that you might be, you know, discussing cool and interesting ideas with. And so I would say those would be the first two things. So learn and specialize, especially if you don't have any experience here. Figure out what you like, figure out what you enjoy, but then also like come to these events where you kind of get more exposure. Yeah.
Come to BizTech events.
Yeah, come to the BizTech events.
So this year at BizTech, we have an event just about starting startups. Out of an event like this, what's something you wish you got when you were starting your startup?
Super cool, actually, having a startup focused event, because I think we didn't have it when I was at BizTech. Yeah, it's really cool. I think one thing I wish I had, if I were to be like an attendee at this event, is just mainly the opportunity to meet really cool people. And so really cool people just means, it doesn't necessarily, okay, this is one other thing. There's sort of this bias, I think, with a lot of these events where, people kind of only want to talk to the partners that are only from big tech companies because they think that somehow, they're cooler or like, they have this experience. I think that most often than not, like a lot of the very interesting conversations I've had and also where I've learned the most, it's actually from people that aren't from these big tech companies. So I think that first of all, it's just like coming in, this is a preface where like coming into these events without a bias where it's like, oh, I just want to find people that, are from Google, from Facebook, like all these cool companies, but just like coming in with an open mind and just coming in with the desire to just have a great conversation and learn. I think that's the very first thing. But I think that something I really want is just like a huge diversity of people. Because when you're coming to these events, it's not just about meeting people, but it's about learning from them, right? And the more diverse this sort of population is, the more you can learn from and possibly gain ideas, have these conversations, and all these different things. And so whether that's in the diversity of the panelists or the partners that are coming in or the diversity of like the audience, I think that at the end of the day, just like getting a lot of different people into one room who are all like-minded and want to like build something is the most important thing. And that mindset is just the most important thing too, of coming into these events.
Let's talk a little bit about internships.
Yes.
I'm sure we've been sort of startup focused this whole conversation. Let's spend a little last little bit talking about internships.
Yeah.
So kind of walk me through your path. You've landed some pretty big roles and you got into data. So how did that happen for you in terms of internships?
Yeah, so I mean, you already heard the story of how I got my first internship. That was that. But for a very long time, I was sort of interested in data science and machine learning. This sort of started when I was in first year. When I remember I was mostly in the software engineering route. I was like, I was building apps, I was doing all these things, but then I was like, it felt kind of repetitive. And this might be because of me, whereas then I was just focusing on a very specific type of software engineering, as in web development. But then I sort of grew tired of it, and I was like, surely there is more to this. And so I came to this thing called data science and machine learning, and I think it's just super cool that you can create these like algorithms that can predict very complicated things, right? And so I sort of made it a mission to like learn that and be good at it. And so obviously it's still a journey, and I'm still trying to get to that point, but I think that focusing on that sort of honed in my niche towards like the data, ML, and AI side. And so a lot of the companies I ended up applying to and working for have been mostly in data roles. And so Cohere was the first one. And then after that, I remember I was at Wealthsimple, and that was last year. And so this was also a data-focused role. And then most recently, it was at Hugging Face, and this was just an AI-specific role. So yeah, it's sort of been very similar trajectories like within the data, machine learning, and AI space. So in general, I would say, yeah, it is super helpful to have a niche, and that's sort of what I've tried to hone on in and try. But I'm not saying that you should like find your niche super early, because a lot of people use internships as a way to find out what that niche is, right? I'm just saying for me and for my experience personally, I've decided very early on what my niche is supposed to be, and I've kind of honed in on that. But it's totally valid to like kind of find your niche
through internships.
Exactly, as you go. It's totally valid.
So I think data is definitely growing in popularity with the hype around machine learning and AI right now.
Yeah.
For someone trying to build their tech portfolio who wants to be focused on data, do you have any tools, tips, advice?
Yeah, I would say this is what I tell a lot of people too. This is how I got my start. I think just going onto Kaggle is a very great resource to get started. Kaggle, so that's KAGGLE.com. It's sort of this like platform where you can learn data science. There's these competitions in Kaggle where like you see how the top people around the world solve very specific machine learning problems. And then there's just like a whole repository of like different models, different like techniques people use. It's sort of like an all-in-one learning and like competition platform. And that's sort of how I got my start. I kind of just learned a bunch of different things, started branching out from there. But it's sort of a very easy way to get started, whereas like they give you all the tools you need to get started, all the foundation, and you work your way from there. And I think like one other thing that people really need to have is sort of like patience and curiosity, because like data science, I would say, is not like software engineering, or at least like coding or web development, where like your input, the feedback loop between input and output is very quick, right? Because like you build a website, you make a button change here or there, it immediately changes, and you can immediately see it visible, right? But for, I would say, machine learning, it's a bit more of a longer process where like you have to tweak different parameters in the model. You need to know why you're tweaking them and all these different things. And so it's sort of a more drawn out process. So I guess like just having the patience to deal with it as it comes. Yeah, just sort of those two things.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
We really appreciated it. I'm going to ask you one last fun question. What's something you're surprisingly good at that's not like super conventional? Something that's like a hidden talent of yours.
Yeah, so this isn't really like a, like, you know, it is surprising, but like I have perfect pitch.
Oh.
So that means it's like really easy to like kind of learn instruments. And it's something sometimes very annoying, because like when you drag a chair, or like when you, like I can hear the frequency and the exact note.
That's hilarious.
And like when like an ambulance is passing by, you know how sometimes it goes slightly higher the closer you are in pitch, and a Doppler effect, exactly. And so it's like really cool because I get to like pinpoint what exactly that note is.
Whoa, that's cool.
And like, yeah, it's just, sometimes it's annoying too, because like people, the moment they hear about it, it's like, oh, what's this note? And they like play a piano or something.
I was literally going to do that right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Pull the Charlie Puth interview out.
Yeah, I'm well aware. But yeah.
That's hilarious. I have a question.
Yeah.
Follow-up question.
Mm-hmm.
You have perfect pitch. I've been into music all my life.
Okay. Yeah.
I have really good relative pitch. I don't have absolute pitch.
Yeah.
If I play you a super dissonant set of 5 notes, so
Yes.
they're not a chord that you
Yes.
typically hear. Like
Yes.
let's say it's just like it's semitones and tritones.
Yeah.
Can you still discern every single one of those?
99% of the time, yes.
Oh man, my life sucks as a musician. I should give
Oh,
up.
I mean, it's like something I had to like realize too. It's not something that I was like, oh, I'm good at this and I can like immediately play stuff. Like it's something you have to also hone in, practice, to be able to like realize the benefits.
Have you heard about as you age?
Yeah.
Your perfect pitch gets
Degrades
skewed.
too? Oh, skewed?
No, but it gets skewed so that you get skewed by a certain amount of frequency. So then the note that you're sure is A, for example, you're for sure it's C or something like that.
I don't think it's gonna be that bad, but I think by a few semitones or like a few like, because the way perfect pitch works, at least for me, is that when I hear that note, it's literally saying out. No, it's not a color. It's literally saying out. Like it's sort of like if you play the note A, like it's as if like the note was shaped like the way it's speaking A, or like la. Yeah. And so it's like you just immediately know what it is. And like I think if it were to shift, it just shift by a very small margin.
Go watch Rick Beato's video.
I know. His son, I think, has perfect pitch too.
He did too.
Oh, he did?
Yeah,
he did.
So that's the whole thing. Is as he ages, it's less reliable for him.
Damn, I didn't know that.
It's interesting.
All
right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Totally, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Right, nice. Thank you, guys.